very interesting what if scenario, which is posited on the football pod this week by James O'Donoghue. Here he is in conversation with Paddy Andrews and with Tommy Rooney, just talking about the Dubs, right? Like, just for example, say what would happen if Con didn't come back and James McCarthy didn't come back, or if they do come back, what kind of state are they going to be in? Are they peak position? Let's just have a look at this.
Fit are they at the moment? Like how far off are they? Are they
probably
running?
fairer than me and you, James.
Are they running?
I don't talk to the lads. I'm on the outside now. I'm finished.
Are they running? Come on, you know.
Are they running?
Are they?
I'd say they're running faster than me.
Like, because if they're not at least up to 80%, they're not going to have the time. They're not going to have the time, I don't think, to get up to their level.
I don't know, honestly. I don't know. Even I tell the football pod listeners.
If you could say, Paddy, how many games would you say it would take for you to go from completely unsharp to All-Ireland winning sharp? How many games
you need? Like, you can do all the training games and stuff from the world and hit training targets. Everyone needs games. And like, we're talking about two of the best players in the country, and McCarthy, probably one of the best players of all time, but you do need games.
You do.
And like you said it, James, this season is a unique season in terms of you always had that window that if the league finishes at the start of April, you had the club stuff for a month, you'd play 2 or 3 games, then you'd like a month of kind of nearly pre-season, and then you roll into championship. That's not a luxury teams have this year. You've got to be, it's literally league into championship, and you have got to be sharp. And yeah, of course, Dublin are going to want those guys. They're going to want those guys back, obviously, because they've 3 massive games in March to try and somehow pull it out of the bag and stay in Division 1. But for those players as well, I know for myself, from my own experience, 2 or 3 games, just nearly to get the confidence up, get the touch up, to sharpen everything up by half a second. Yeah. You know, when you're coming back and you haven't played games, or you feel like you're not match sharpness, you'll take an extra step on your shot, or you'll look twice before flicking the pass.
Yeah, I think they need at least 2 league games, because how much of a white heat of championship is Leinster?
Well, that's the other question about that one. Tommy, good morning to you.
Good morning, Ger. Good morning, Eoin.
What's your take on this? You get the offcuts, the before and after chats.
Yeah, and there isn't that many of them, I'll be honest with you, lads. There's too much talking going on in those podcasts.
When the podcast's 2 hours long, I suppose there couldn't be, but go on.
Exactly. Well, I suppose I've had the honour of watching Dublin unravel in front of my eyes. I've been at quite a few games with Paddy over the last couple of years, and I think Paddy's own dealings with myself in the middle of matches has been interesting. Do you know, there was a quiet resignation at the weekend on Saturday. He nudged me before it and said, or Sunday, he said, you know, what do you think's going to happen here? And I said, I think Kildare win. He wanted to put a 5 on it. The Dubs get beaten, shaking his head during the game at times, whereas last year there was a bit more shouting and roaring coming out of him. I think he knows what he's seeing in front of him.
There's no squeezing of the knee going on, is that what you're saying?
It's not happening. Yeah. So, what I think is happening here, like I actually agree with James O'Donoghue. I think it's going to be very difficult for anyone to come in and make a huge difference to Dublin at the minute. I think they're a long way off it. Like, I think while they didn't play that badly against Kildare, and if they'd taken their goals they would have beaten them, we might be having a different conversation. I just think the general depth there is so far off. I just think it's just so stark in comparison to what Mayo's depth is at the minute.
We've got an interesting dynamic here for everybody at home who can't see Ger shuffling uncomfortably in his chair at the moment, is that we have somebody who has just overseen their county defeat Dublin and is worried that that is not going to be a meaningful result come the summertime. You are terrified of the Dubs
you don't
being good at football this
summer. You don't want the 2 games we play against Dublin this year, if we play them again, you don't want the 2 games this year to break 50-50. Like, do you know what I mean? Yeah. How many times, but actually you're more likely to beat them having beaten them. And it was interesting, is it Patty in the Leinster, is he the chairman or the secretary, whatever it is, I apologise for incorrectly titling you, but even he's saying it would have been interesting to see what the hell would have happened if Kildare had any belief that they could have beaten them last year. It's like a subtle, not so subtle dig at Jack O'Connor sending that team out to go, sure, look, if we keep it kicked out to them, we'll be doing well. Keep it down 10 or 15 points here, that's not bad. That's progress. That's clear progress. He's like, if they just shown a bit of belief in themselves last year, who knows what would have happened. I'm like, yes. Sorry, I just had to bring that in there. But Why are we turning this into a piece about Kildare?
Well, it's just interesting that's kind of like your body language, and that's kind of how you're
I just don't think the zombie is dead. I don't think the zombie has had the second thing, like through the stake through the heart for the vampire, whatever it is that actually kills a zombie these days.
Yeah, like I mean, it is kind of like Voldemort dying, and there is a chance that he like comes back and uses another body as like a host for him, and all of a sudden uses that to gradually grow into his own evil being once again, and everybody's terrified because of all the evil things that have happened in the past.
Exactly.
People don't want to believe
PTSD
that Voldemort is back, but it could happen.
Can I posit one scenario which is not completely ridiculous? That the amount of game time and the return to play, I would have said Con didn't look as dynamic last season as he has done in previous years. I don't know if that was like the long seasons with Kula catching up over a couple of years. I don't know if it was just like that happens to you at various stages in your career. And you would say James McCarthy was excellent for most of the year, but certainly he seemed like a Cuchulainn fighting the ingovernable sea in the last 20 minutes of the game against Mayo, overrun in midfield, which I'd never seen before, right? So I think what they're doing is they're saying, off you go, get right. And like, how much time do you really need? Did you need the two club matches, the month of pre-season, and the two Leinster games, really? Or is it actually okay to do the two Leinster games and peak for the first time this year in a Leinster final in Croke Park, which is what Dublin can realistically do? Maybe they can't, maybe they lose the semi-final, but if they lose the semi-final, it's like not going to be that scary a route through the qualifiers for them.
Yeah, I think you're. It's interesting what you're saying about Con last year. My sense of Con last year was that he was utterly frustrated. Was that standards had clearly changed around them and things weren't working the way they should have been working. The players were doing stuff they shouldn't have been doing, and we saw that last year. Maybe it was burnout. Maybe it was what other parents have experienced in Dublin and they've stepped away, like Jack McCaffrey and Paul Mannion. For me last year, I thought it was frustration. I think it's what we're also seeing in the likes of Niall Scully and Brian Howard and maybe Brian Fenton. They're not used to playing in a team that just isn't functioning the way it is. The way that Dublin played for 5-6 years, the team that those lads came into, they slipped into a side that were at the very, very top of their game.
Yeah.
And it's very difficult for them now not to be the standard setters, because I'm sure they've always set standards, but to be the leaders on the pitch, the ones that are calling the shots, that are making the shouts, the changes. Paddy could recognise who it was at the weekend, but there was a lot of talking on the pitch from Dublin. Johnny Cooper did so much of that. Johnny Cooper's already made a big difference. And I suppose James questioning, like James O'Donoghue, I think, has come from a stage in his career where he had to try and get up to championship fitness, and he probably struggled to do so for 3 or 4 years.
Fair enough.
So I think that's the point he's making, is that the Munster Championship doesn't help.
I accept he has way more evidence and information and experience of this than I do, but I do also think there's another scenario.
Well, if we are going off evidence here, like the evidence is that Con O'Callaghan was named to start a full forward in a game this year in the National League for Dublin. So he got injured. There were various reports about where the injury was picked up. So something happened that he was chosen to play a game, or he would have been in the ideal starting team for Dessie Farrell within the first couple of weeks of this year's league, and then that didn't happen. So that idea that Dessie Farrell has said to Con O'Callaghan, go and get yourself right, we don't need you for the early stages of the league. Well, that just didn't happen.
Well, they're wrapping him up in cotton wool and they're taking every precaution.
I'm
so
sure
there's like
they've
a tiny
changed tacks now because he's picked up a knock.
Yeah. Which game was he named for?
Kerry. And Kieran Archer took the 14 jersey instead. Like it reportedly a challenge match took place a week or two before that, and that's where
so a week or two before, and he was named in the thing which is sent to the, like, do you know what I mean? They decided before they named the team that he was gone.
It seemed that way. Or otherwise, they were playing challenge matches between Armagh and Kerry, which is maybe another explanation, which could be another theory for why they've been so poor, is that they're actually completely running the teams into the ground and playing challenge match. But I don't think that's the case. I think it might have been before the Armagh match. But either way, it seemed that Plan A was to have Con O'Callaghan available for the league this year.
No. If they knew he was out, but they named him in the team anyway, what's that about?
But that would just be an unnecessary leap to try and confuse people.
But if he got injured,
it's very hard to know.
Yeah, we don't know is the point, right? And until I'm standing over the bloodied corpse, I am Dadding Thomas, putting my wound and feeling around in Jesus' body to go, there's a bit of you came out there, Jesus.
But you see, that's the thing. Like, I mean, I don't think even that is good enough. Like, you refer to it as a zombie. I mean, I guess Jesus was technically a zombie as well. Like, death is not even enough for us to be sure that this thing is over.
No, they need to lose a couple of seasons in a row.
Yeah,
I think
even this year we'll be like, no, there's still too many of them. They're coming back.
Yeah,
it's going to be like Cody's Kilkenny, I think, lads, isn't it? Like the bouncing back with double All-Irelands, back-to-back All-Irelands a couple of years apart. I think we're going to see that.
Tommy made the point yesterday, though. We were the same team.
Yeah,
Tommy Walsh made that point. We were still the same team.
Because I would have bought into that, Tommy, definitely. But I tipped Dublin to win the All-Ireland at the end of last year because I thought that's exactly what would have happened, that there would have been a sting in the tail. But I think the early evidence this year is that is unlikely to happen.
Well, I think he thought Paul Mannion was coming back, and
yeah, maybe. But even some of the players that you kind of trust and like they haven't even been playing up to their own standard, which I guess is something that gives them a level of hope. But yeah, Mannion coming back, McCaffrey coming back would have been great. I don't think anybody thought that was going to happen, and there was still, I thought, a question mark over Cluxton, but that was just maybe a bit naive on my part to think that would have happened. So I did think that there was a real chance that this was going to happen, and it still could, obviously. Like, nobody's saying that they're outside the contenders, because everybody in those top 8 to 10 teams feels like a contender at the moment. But I don't think they're in the same place as Kilkenny were after losing in 2010. I think that they were probably a stronger proposition back then because they had so many players still around.
I think serious questions do have to be asked, though, lads, about, and I know this is sacrilege to say, I think that Jim Gavin did greater than any manager could have possibly done with the 6 years he had with that team, 7 years. But is it okay to question the transition and the management of what was coming next? Because I read out a list to Paddy of the last 12, 13, 14, under 20, under 21 players of the year. And Dublin have had 3 of the last 8. And none of them have had an impact in inter-county football at senior level. And nearly all of the others did. You're talking Keith Higgins, Colm O'Neill, Fintan Gould, Thomas Flynn in Galway, Diarmuid O'Connor from Mayo, Jimmy Hyland from Kildare. They've all had massive impacts on inter-county football at senior level. Yet Conor McHugh, Aaron Byrne, and granted Kieran Archer are still young, but none of them seem like they're ready or they're being able to take the responsibility of being a senior inter-county footballer. Conor McHugh won it in 2014. He was under 20 footballer of the year on a team that included Mannion, McCaffrey, McDade, 3 or 4 others that
they did okay from that team. Then you'd have to say that team, like, you can't question them getting throughput from that team. That one individual is I would say circumstantial evidence. I think your broader point, though, to take it away from the individuals, is that there hasn't been that next tier of players. The strength and depth was with the older players who retired and took away all of the experience and the intellectual property and the knowledge and the know-how and all that kind of stuff, and the standard setting, and the ones who were coming in probably haven't had enough exposure, certainly to game time. Now, they might have been around the panel, like, you know.
But maybe that doesn't make a difference. Maybe you're collecting all Ireland medals there, but you're not getting the real life experience, do you know? Maybe it's I don't know what the fix is there, though, because
they're getting it now.
He could have done better with the squad he had, you know.
Like this is when that real life experience is gained, and that's maybe what Dessie Farrell is thinking to himself at the moment. It's like that this is not ideal right now, but it's a necessary thing that unfortunately or fortunately just wasn't available to these players over the last couple of years because they were too good. The players in front of them were too good and everything was rosy in the garden. Dublin were winning consecutive All-Ireland, so there was no way that this could have happened. It was just a natural consequence. Like, we must forget that this was a historically good team. Like, there is no stencil for how you actually organise conveyor belts post 6 All-Irelands in a row, because they're the only team to have ever done 6 in a row.
Yeah, now you'd have to say they didn't get enough credit for that during the time. That certainly I thought that there would be a bunch of players of similar standard coming through, and it looked like there was when Howard and Scully came through and started to be able to impact games at that age in their careers, where they were, I know, Tom, you're saying they're coming into a perfect scenario, but they were definitely having an influence, where Con was having an influence. It felt like they were able to bring players of that standard in, and so what's happened is that the next group of players coming through have not lived up to that. And so if you were to add in, say Con was back, say Mannion was still around, say McCarthy was there, and you added in three more players of that standard, all of a sudden that's a completely transformed team. That's 6 players of greatness who you have. But that hasn't happened. And that's, I think, where it's legitimate to go, what is the process that they have to try and bring those players through, and why are those players not coming through, and why is the club scene... You know, Paul Caffrey said the club games have been boring, that the quality of football being played isn't good enough, that the creativity isn't there. So
there was also sorry, go on, Tommy.
I just was going to put it on record that maybe we're lucky we never split Dublin in 2.
Well,
you know,
no,
they may have.
maybe, but like, I actually don't agree with that at all. Like, it's still a completely idiotic championship where Longford go up against Dublin.
True.
Like, makes no sense.
Yeah.
Makes no sense.
Cheek, but yeah, no, exactly. But I think that is the big question: is like, where did those players go? Like, I think if Conor McHugh, Aaron Byrne win an under-21 player of the year, they're immediately put into an inter-county side. They're being thrown into Leinster Championship. Sure, they're getting beaten for a couple of years, but they're getting the chance to develop. I feel like some of those players were banished to being nothing players. They weren't even making the B team in training.
They weren't
even making the B team.
Yeah, like, you know, Jimmy Hyland has matured this season. Like, he had injury problems because he was coming through and playing for loads of teams as well. So, like,
yes.
the pathway isn't straightforward, and Jimmy Hyland's obviously absolutely sensational, you know. I mean, maybe Archer needs another couple of years of conditioning or something, or maybe he needs to decide that he actually wants to do the level of commitment that is required to be a Dublin inter-county footballer.
Like, the thing about splitting Dublin in two is that if you split Dublin in two, one of those Dublins would have won an All-Ireland over the last little while. Like, so it's I think people are analysing it, but like, it's a completely nonsensical notion, and I think I'm not sure that's going to constantly hold up over the next little while. But there was also the last thing that is that there was also a bunch of players there during the Jim Gavin era that just got better. Like, Cluxton got better under Jim Gavin. Philly McMahon is somebody who really improved. Brian Fenton is somebody who did make the 21s team, didn't make minor. He comes through and constantly improves under Jim Gavin. Paul Mannion, I thought at the start, wasn't going to reach the level that Paul Mannion eventually reached. Conor Callaghan is an exception to that because he came in and was exceptional from the very start. But there was a whole tranche of players who came in as good players and became great players within that system.
Yeah, Scully, I think you'd have to, and Howard as well. Right.
Paddy Andrews is your good example there as well, you know. Without Jim Gavin, I'm not sure where Paddy would have ended up.
Yeah, no, totally. So, all right, Tommy,
thanks, lads.
Good pod this week. Thanks a million.
Yeah, that's good stuff from the lads. Thank you.